Hey, how you doing? My name's Dan. I'm your host of The Journey, as well as host Jake. And we're here we from Pathfinder Counseling Group, and we want to talk about post-traumatic stress disorder today, this morning. And how does one experience some distress disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms? These symptoms can come from auto accidents, maybe a Humvee accident at the National Training Center. It can come from assaults. It can come from a variety of incidents in your life, even in childhood, whether it may be adverse childhood experiences that you may have had experienced. Jake, I think you have an important disclaimer to make.
Yeah. So this is not meant to assist anyone in self-diagnosing. This is purely informational. So if you or suspect that you or your a loved one has these symptoms, we would encourage you to seek care from a mental health professional and get evaluated and get some help with whatever you're dealing with.
Exactly. And hopefully you can come our way at Pathfinder Counseling Group here in Clarksville, Tennessee at 101 Hatcher Lane, Suite D. Well, Jake, some of the disorder symptomology may be that intrusive thoughts. Well,
Sure.
one could be intrusive thoughts.
Mhm.
What are intrusive thoughts?
As I frame it to my clients, intrusive is kind of an easy way to think of intrusive is unwanted. They're
Okay.
thoughts that you're having without, you don't want to think about them, but they're coming anyway.
And generally, these intrusive thoughts are surrounding the event that has
Hmm.
led to post traumatic stress disorder. Again, we're talking about a traumatic event that may have happened to you or your loved one. Also, intrusive thoughts, maybe nightmares.
Sure. Yeah. Sleep disturbance in general, difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep. Oftentimes, when it comes to sleep and even appetite, we end up with the brain going extreme one way or extreme the other way. You either sleep not at all or way too much, so insomnia or hypersomnia, and then we see significantly decreased appetite or significantly increased appetite, so overeating or undereating.
Right. And, part of that, I think, is maybe what some in the medical field would call restless leg syndrome, the constant movement of the legs, and you can't sleep. And
Yeah, there's some positive correlation there. It's not that RLS in general could mean that you have PTSD. But there's correlation between an overactive nervous system that can result in RLS being associated with symptoms of PTSD.
okay, all right. Maybe I like one of the sentences here. It says intense or prolonged psychological distress at exposure to internal or external cues. So what that means is maybe we go into a public facility or something and we see someone, and all of a sudden someone that may remind us of an event. Or we're driving down the road and we see an auto accident, and all of a sudden we become distressed. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so internal or external cues, meaning the cue that activates that psychological distress comes internally from maybe those thoughts or reminders of that traumatic experience, or externally where you see something that starts a thought process that that can look like driving down the road, seeing a bag of trash that flew out of somebody's truck on the side of the road, and that sends somebody into a dissociative event from when they were doing convoy operations in Baghdad or
Yeah,
something like that.
right.
So they can come from internal and external.
Right. I remember one time, and it was rather a couple years after the fact that I went to Iraq. I was at what's the one in Louisiana? Fort Polk. I
Mm,
was at Fort Polk, and I was walking down the sidewalk towards my room at the guest house, and there was a garbage bag in the middle of the sidewalk. Literally, Jake,
mm,
I froze.
mm,
I froze, and it's like I couldn't move. I looked at it, And I had to, after a moment or two, I had to back up and walk around it to my room, call the office, and let them know
Mm,
this is what just happened. I don't know. Someone
right.
obviously came and picked it up.
And an important thing there, and a little bit of a personal question. Did you ever experience any IEDs in Iraq?
No, but I was on the road often
Right.
with
And
other troops.
right. And you received training about how to spot and potentially avoid IEDs, right?
Right, right,
And obviously being in a theater of combat, you're well aware of the consequences for impacting an IED.
right.
So that kind of hits a really important note that to experience symptoms of PTSD, you don't actually have to experience
There you go.
the event that you're scared of or the event that is
Right,
triggering that response within your nervous system.
right.
Your brain doesn't know the difference between walking down the sidewalk in Fort Polk
Yeah,
and walking down the sidewalk in Baghdad.
right,
It sees a stimuli, it sees that bag of trash,
right.
and produces a nervous system response.
Wow.
And so, yeah, your brain is that good at protecting you.
Right. Yeah, and that's important. So in one way, what I hear you saying, it's, after having gone through a traumatized event or a series of events, that's kind of normalized.
Yeah, potentially. So, as we know from the DSM, it's criterion A is I'm just going to read it so I don't
Okay.
misspeak here, but
Hmm.
exposure to actual or threatened death, serious injury, or sexual violence in one or more of the following ways, and it lists several ways. But the keywords there are actual or threatened, and the entire time that you were in Baghdad, you were threatened
Right,
with that potential for
right,
coming across an IED.
right.
So not ever actually having experienced that,
Mhm.
obviously experiencing it can trigger that and
Right,
likely will.
right.
We see that all the time with guys, specifically with this issue with seeing trash on the side of the road or,
Hmm.
um, different things from convoy ops, pinch points and stuff like that.
Right.
Um, I had a client one time that, described experiencing a dissociative episode after being caught in traffic.
Hmm.
And just where he was on the highway, he got caught in traffic on a bridge.
Wow.
And that alone wasn't like it was nothing nefarious. It was just a car accident. There was some traffic on the highway, but he ended up on a short bridge. And that alone was enough to trigger a dissociative episode because his brain is so aware of those pinch points from that training.
Right,
Not that he was ever caught on a bridge in combat and was ambushed or anything like that. I'm sure that's happened, but it
right,
didn't happen to him.
right.
Right. And so it's
Mhm.
the actual or threatened death, serious injury, significant consequence.
Right.
So yeah, no, an important clarifier for sure.
Yeah, and I've met several who are nervous, who are hypervigilant, and that's
Mhm.
part of the symptomology,
It is.
hypervigilance. Um, when they go into grocery stores
Yep.
or crowded areas.
Yep. I deal with that myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough one. And again, it goes right back to the same thing that when we get trained to go deploy and go, you know, serve our nation in a theater of combat,
Right.
um, we get taught to avoid crowds.
Yeah.
Crowds are bad.
Right.
If there's a crowd forming in a market, guess where you should not be,
Yeah.
right? Because one way or another, it's usually not going to end well.
Right.
Your brain doesn't know the difference
Right.
between a crowded market in Bagram, Afghanistan, and a mall on a Friday night in Clarksville, Tennessee.
Right.
It doesn't know the difference. It just sees the stimulus, which is lots of people in one spot.
Right.
And then you combine that with the overload of external stimuli,
Hmm.
which is, just noise, different voices, different things going on. But then also, that hypervigilance kicks in where you're trying to keep track of everything that's going on in your environment so you
Right.
can stay safe in that environment. But
Mhm.
you get to a point where we can't keep track of everything that's going on. And that's when we start to feel those kind of system overload type
Right.
experience, symptoms, right?
Right. So we talked a little bit about criterion A
Hmm.
with PTSD, avoidance. Many experience avoidance,
Hmm.
negative alterations in thinking and mood associated with the event, inability to remember an important aspect of the event.
Hmm.
You know, can you speak to any of that before we move on to criterion B a little bit? Or we can talk a little bit more about A.
Um, I mean, we didn't really hit the avoidance piece too hard.
Hmm.
Going back to A, the avoidance piece is a big deal. So, as a clinician, if I'm looking for, if I'm suspecting PTSD in a client, avoidance is something I look for.
Hmm.
If if I'm going to stick with our war vet here, who, it's just kind of what we've been talking about. But, if he say he did get hit, or like yourself, didn't actually experience the IED, but every day was threatened with the potential
Right.
for being hit by an IED, right?
Hmm.
So that guy could avoid, he could be changing his entire travel routes to
Yes.
avoid those pinch points, to avoid routes that have a lot of foot traffic, or routes that have a lot of trash, or items on the side of the road.
Right.
He could be doing all kinds of stuff, changing his daily routine to
Yeah.
avoid
Right.
experiencing those negative alterations in
Yeah.
cognition and mood.
Right.
Because something as simple as, like, like your story about seeing the bag of trash on the, that
Right.
dramatically affected your entire day, I would
Right.
imagine,
Right.
right? And that's reality for a lot of people who experience
Right.
this illness.
Now I know someone that wasn't in war in combat area,
Hmm.
maybe in the National Training Center,
Hmm.
who and I don't know. You ever been to the NTC?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this vet was being chased by Op 4
Mm-hmm.
and dove right into the Humvee, right into a
Oh.
15-foot culvert or hole in the ground, or 20 foot. It just, and then that was many years ago. Auto accident created for him. He would avoid going into Walmart in the afternoons. He would go in the morning to go shopping, or late at night to go shopping to avoid the crowds. Even, it doesn't have to be combat. It
Oh,
could be
yeah,
a
yeah,
simple
no, no.
accident. That's my
Yeah.
point.
I mean, and to clarify, like, I've not been to NTC, like the NTC, but I've done that type of training, if that
Right.
makes sense. So,
Right. Yeah.
yeah. So, no, trauma. Usually what I tell people is, um, everybody's got something.
Right.
Generally speaking, everybody's got something. Nobody gets through life unscathed. So, um, whether that's combat, whether that's childhood, whether that's an auto accident, whether that's witnessing an assault,
Hmm.
that,
Right.
it can literally come from anywhere.
Okay.
So yeah, no, it does not necessarily just have to be combat. That's just, um, the
Right.
flavor of trauma that I'm probably most familiar with.
Yeah. So we did talk about criterion A and B.
Hmm.
Um, and we talked a lot about what to look for in
Sure.
terms of PTSD.
Hmm.
So we just want to encourage you, if you have had any traumatic experience, don't do like some of us happen to do when we have Google or AI.
Yeah.
Do not try to self-diagnose through those platforms, but come and see a mental health specialist. And you're welcome to see either Jake or myself or our counselors here at Pathfinder Counseling Group.
Yep. Absolutely.
Any last word, Jake?
Um, no, I think we pretty well hit it.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. If you've, like I said, like you said, if you or a loved one is experiencing, what you think might be symptoms of PTSD, don't wait.
Right.
A lot of people put themselves through a lot of undue, um, stress, and really difficult times, just by not wanting to confront the thing that's bothering them. Um, I can't tell you the number of times, I'm sure you've had clients tell you too, like, I wish I would have done this years ago.
Right.
And our whole job is to help people through that. And so, you know it might be scary, but it's, the first,
worth it. Yeah.
it's the first step of the rest of your life,
Right.
don't allow yourself to continue to be hindered by what happened to you.
Before we close, I feel like a preacher now when he gets to wrap up and then he's in there for 20 minutes. But before we close, I promise you, Josh, we're not going to spend another 20 minutes. But our cameraman. But I do want to mention uh, something here, and maybe you can speak to it. We're not medical doctors.
No.
No. We are mental health service providers.
Mhm.
Okay. Uh, Speak to the use of medicine. From your experience, is there medicine available for those who experience some of these symptoms?
Absolutely. So, I mean, when you take kind of opinion out of it and you look at things objectively, we look at, we base everything we do in our field based on, evidence-backed research, right?
Right.
What works on paper, what generates the best statistics, right?
Right.
Statistically speaking, the best chances of recovery, the most profound recovery we see, comes through a combination of regular psychotherapy
Right.
and medication.
That's right.
That said, you are always in control of your treatment,
Mhm.
right? And so there's some people who, for whatever reason, they don't want to do the medication route.
Right.
That's fine. There is no evidence to suggest that you must be medicated for post-traumatic stress disorder. However, it could increase, your ability to manage your symptoms. It could help you fight that fight that you're fighting in your mind every day.
Right.
So it can be beneficial for sure, but it's not for everybody. And at the end of the day, you're in charge of your care. So don't let, whether you're working with Dan or I, we aren't going to push medication on you. We're going to make sure you know the potential benefit.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, if you decide medicine's not for you, then okay, we'll continue with psychotherapy and we'll make it work. So don't let, whether it's a therapist or a psychiatrist, don't let somebody force that or try to force that on you if that's not what you want. But also, do educate yourself and be aware of the possible benefits of medication.
That's right. And I will end with a success story. Um, and I appreciate what you said. One client, took a while, and in the process of psychotherapy, he determined for himself that he would like to try medication.
Mhm.
And once he started with medication, his symptomology was lessened.
Mhm.
I mean, greatly so that he can start to enjoy life.
Yep.
So I think that's important to realize that there are resources available to you.
Well, absolutely. And, and to be clear, there's all kinds of innovative types of therapy out
Right.
there for trauma specifically.
Right.
EMDR is a big one.
Mhm.
It's considered widely to be the gold standard of trauma therapy. I actually just worked with a firefighter not too long ago that experienced a bad call and came in, and I think it took 3 or 4 sessions, and he reported almost a complete resolution of symptoms within a month, and now he's back out there doing his job and serving his community.
Right.
And said, it would, in that kind of field, it's not if, it's when,
Right.
there's going to be another bad call. But he knows exactly where to go and who to call and how to deal with it the next time. And so there are other, there's brain spotting,
Right.
and nowadays there's psychedelic assisted therapy. There's all kinds of different stuff going on.
Right.
Um, TMS is another big one, transcranial magnetic stimulation. That's another way we can heal trauma physiologically. And so now we're kind of blending the mental and medical way we treat the brain, right?
Right.
So there's a lot of options out there to be able to help with, the effects of trauma.
Right.
So, don't wait,
Right.
deal with it so you can get back to living the life you want to live and enjoying that higher quality of life. And get back to being yourself.
Right. And this is Dan and Jake from the Journey at Pathfinder Counseling Group. If you like us, please subscribe to us, like the video, and please share it with others. It's important that we share it with others, especially our veteran peers. Okay, God bless, and we'll see you next time.